Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we sort of sketched out the landscape of McMaster Divinity College, the departments and background.
Right, the broader picture.
Exactly. But today we're zeroing in on something that really seems to define the place. Its evangelical spirit. It kind of jumps out.
It really does. And it's interesting because, you might think being part of a big university like McMaster maybe pushes places towards being more, pluralistic or even secular.
Yeah, that's often the assumption with rigorous academia, isn't it?
Totally. But MDC, well, it holds on to its evangelical identity pretty firmly. It's definitely more than just like a historical label for them. It shapes the whole feel of the place.
You can really sense that commitment then. It's not just on paper.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about the pressures, maybe financial or administrative alignment with the wider university. But MDC seems to consistently prioritize that spiritual core. And you see it in concrete ways.
Like what sort of things?
Well, for instance, the president leads a Holy Communion service at the end of each semester. That's quite a statement,
Yeah, that definitely sends a message about what's central. And it's not just like one big event.
Yeah. No, not at all. They have weekly chapel services. That's a regular rhythm.
Okay.
And you also find prayer meetings run by students themselves, spontaneously almost.
So it's woven into the student life, too.
Definitely. You even hear about students, sharing the gospel right there on the main McMaster campus.
Wow. That really speaks to a personal conviction, not just an institutional stance. You mentioned an experience you had during orientation.
Yeah, I did. It was back in 2022, orientation. They actually split us into groups in professors' offices.
Okay.
And the focus was intercessory prayer. My professor, he literally got out a piece of paper, wrote down everyone's prayer requests.
Seriously?
Yeah, and then specifically prayed over them. For us, it felt, incredibly supportive. Really showed the faculty's personal investment.
That's a level of care you maybe wouldn't expect in a PhD program environment.
Right. It's not typical. And it wasn't just orientation. Lots of classes actually start with prayer. It just creates a different kind of atmosphere in the room. Sometimes, in lectures, there'd be these moments. Quite moving, actually, a shared sense of faith.
So the faculty see themselves as more than just lectures. There's a kind of pastoral element, too.
I think so. For some, definitely. You hear stories of professors praying for students' families or like even visiting someone at their ministry placement just to offer encouragement.
That's quite holistic.
It really is. It feels like an integrated approach. Education, mentorship, spiritual care, all kind of wrapped together.
And thinking about the Canadian context specifically, with its focus on multiculturalism, indigenous spirituality, MDC, maintaining such a distinct Christian focus, well, it takes on a certain significance, doesn't it?
Exactly. It feels like a very conscious choice to hold fast to that theological identity within a really diverse setting. And I think, honestly, that's a huge part of the appeal for people who are serious about both their faith and top-level scholarship. They're looking for a place where those two things aren't just tolerated side by side, but actually nurtured together.
Yeah, I can see that. It really clarifies why someone wanting that deep integration would find MDC a really compelling option, a community where both sides are valued.
It does. And, speaking of scholarship, next time we're going to dive into another really key piece for anyone considering a PhD there. The actual research opportunities and the resources available.
Ah, okay. Good.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. Definitely crucial stuff. So maybe something to think about until then is, how does having such a strong, clearly defined spiritual anchor like we've discussed, how might that actually shape the kind of research questions people ask there or the conversations they have?
That's an interesting question. How faith shapes the inquiry itself.
Exactly. Something to mull over before we get into the nuts and bolts of research next time.
Sounds great. We'll pick it up there. Until then, stay curious.